Hello, my name is Duran. I'm studying Business Administration and I'm going to tell you about Asian hate. So, the coronavirus is a virus that has spread around the world, which has caused great economic and social problems in all countries. Many cases have been seen of millions of infected and how some cannot be saved from this, and today still don't know when this pandemic will end. Although it was caused problems to all of them. In the United States, a hate crime against a specific community has started because in their country was the beginning of this great pandemic, and they have started to kill and violent against Asians. Since that any Asian has coronavirus just for big Asian, this has generated a great displeasure among this community because they are not responsibility for this inside called coronavirus. Isn't possible that an Asian who has lived all his life in the United States can contain this virus just because his blood is Chinese. It means that he carries the coronavirus with him. These cases are not new things since the virus arrived in the United States. This case of violence against the Chinese community could already begin since when the pandemic was just beginning, and there were already cases of hate crimes because they were Chinese. It has been possible to show videos of how they beat and mistreat this community, which are quite violent, and these hate crimes are not only seen in adults. It has been possible to see cases of young people beating their Chinese peers for having the same idea of their parents to believe that they have the virus in their blood just for being Chinese. And don't give truth to the action they do. It's already been seen how this community has moved with the protests to explain that being Chinese doesn't mean that they have the virus. In the end, the virus comes from their country. It is something that cannot be denied, but they don't mean that any Chinese will have the virus when they haven't even gone their country in their life. It is also in how the hate crime investigation that exists all over the United States and don't give it much importance to the Chinese American one, which means it's quite too difficult to understand the nature of characteristics of the unfair victims and situation. There was already a great deal of hate crime against Chinese Americans, and as a result of pandemic and the COVID-19 virus. This great hatred towards them grew much more and this community has always felt invisible toward this case, and if there was not crime, and it was never reported in their newspaper, and very little importance was given to them. In my humble opinion, based on the context that have been seen in the last year with everything that has happened and in many countries these cases have been not seen much, it can be deduced that the crime of hatred towards the Asian community because in their country began to the pandemic of coronavirus, it can be seen that its great hatred towards this doesn't make any sense since there are many factors that show that this virus was spread more by citizens of other countries who returned to their country than by the Asian community that was not even in their country before this pandemic began. It could be seen how Chinese in less than a year could totally control the coronavirus and already return to this current economy, even at this point, while the other countries had not been able to control this virus. The great hatred that is given to them. It is now that it will not stop from one day to another, as if you pull a lever to end. This will be something that will be marked and which they will have to live and gradually improve to the opinion they have about them, which was already quite complicated and frowned upon. In conclusion, we can see that having a hatred towards a certain country just because their country was the beginning of the pandemic of the coronavirus is not something that is fair, since many of them who share these characteristics of this country but are not born there are not to blame for this great incident that has caused a great commotion around the world. This would be like continuing to hate any German, only that in his history there was a person who can cause one of the great violators of Jewish rights and many people when they didn't have the same ideology or only share the same genes of Germany were not born there. People have to make mistakes many times in what we do and say, and I know that will be marked in the history and hope that Chinese in the future will not have the continue to endure the hardship as the country that caused economic extinction to the world war. Thank you very much.